He's attorney and founder of CEO at Senior Partners at Genco Legal. Brian, this just came across. I want to just get your take. Democratic senators are suing to block the appointment of Matthew Whitaker as acting attorney general. It is Senator Blumenthal combined with Senator Whitehouse, Senator Hirono, what a treat she is. They are together putting a suing to stop Whitaker from assuming this position temporarily. He can only keep it for 200-plus days because he didn't go through, I imagine one of the things they'll say, he didn't go through a confirmation process. Well, on merit, where do you think this goes?
Good morning, Brian. And, hey, Senator Hirono, I don't know that we're allowed to talk. Weren't men supposed to shut up?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, men are not allowed to talk, but I'm going to give you a special waiver. I'm going to allow you to own that.
I appreciate that. So, look, I think that this is far overreach. I think they're doing this more for optics than for a legal footing or standing that they have. Whitaker is the chief of staff of the Attorney General's office, and no one has said that he's going to be the permanent Attorney General. Now, I would tell you, Brian, if the president had come out and said, look, Sessions is leaving and I'm replacing him permanently with Whitaker, I think there would be issues as to whether the Senate had the ability to weigh in as they do on other cabinet members. But it's always been determined that he would be temporary, so that the grounds that they're trying to knock him out on a lack of Senate confirmation is, in my opinion, premature until the president says this is my guy going forward. I will say this, if Trump does make a decision, which it doesn't look like he's going to pick Whitaker permanently, then I think he would have to go through and get the advice of the Senate.
Right. And by the way, yeah, Radcliffe would be, I think, is the odds-on favorite to get it, the congressman from Texas. But last night, it was hard to miss. You know, the number one magazine show in the world for the last 50 years has been 60 Minutes, and they looked at healthcare and drug costs and why these drugs that are so valuable get ratcheted up so much. And in fact, Senator Portman is now suing the drug company that was featured last night, Naloxone, because they upped their price of their drug 600% as its effectiveness became apparent. Can you give me an idea of what's going on with the Wild West of pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I can give you a good idea, Brian, because here in Florida, we're the Wild East. We started this. What people don't understand is over the last 19 years, Florida has led the Oxy Express, and that's exactly the term that has been used down here of OxyContin. For your audience, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about opiates, and we're talking about what Senator Portman's worried about, which is a drug, naloxone. Narcan is what it's called, and that drug is used. It's a nasal spray that first responders can use on folks that have had an opiate overdose and, quite frankly, are near death, and that they can be revived. This drug, I know a very good, high-respected doctor who worked with Nancy Reagan back in the 80s who said this is the life-saving drug of this millennium. And this thing being jacked up to the price that the pharmaceutical company is doing is an outrage. And credit to Senator Portman for calling it out and 60 Minutes.
What's going to control it? I mean, forget about this drug. What about other drugs? We see this, you see these prices. And one thing the president will love to attack, since he can't really seem to want to revamp Obamacare or come up with his other plan, what could he start doing in terms of the drug costs?
That's a great question, because a couple of years ago, you remember we had the EpiPen. For anyone out there who has any of these allergies where you need a shot of epinephrine or you could go into some type of shock and potential death, the EpiPen was jacked up, I want to say at that point, 500%. And that's exactly what you're seeing now with naloxone. My view, Brian, is this goes all for what the president can do and what Congress can do is government payer. People don't focus enough in healthcare on who actually is paying the bill. Government is the payer of healthcare to the tune of 80%. There is an absolutely wonderful document from January of this past year by Senator Ron Johnson that's called Drugs for Dollars, How Medicaid Helped Fuel the Opiate Epidemic. It talks about how the Obama and Obamacare Medicaid expansion was directly related to the opiate epidemic. Why? Medicaid recipients pay very little for their copay. They're paying $1 for 240 OxyContins, all right? So when you've got a big pharmaceutical company, to answer your question, who is negotiating rates with Medicaid and Medicare for that type of number, for the love of God, why can they not be negotiating rates so that some of these life-saving drugs are lower? President's been all about cutting better deals with our allies, including places from France to Germany. We need to cut better deals with Pfizer. We need to cut better deals with GlaxoSmithKline. That's the most important issue quite frankly, to Americans, and it showed out in the election post polls as far as what the number one issue is. People are tired of the cost of their health care and their life-saving drugs, but at the same time, Brian, there is no excuse that we are giving away this junk for $1 a pill.
Exactly. The other thing is, in the biotech world, you have investors who see research that shows promise, whether it's polio, the flu, paralysis. They'll pour their money in, and if it works, I want them to make money. We need that mix of entrepreneurship as well as the push to get something to market. But we got to be able to afford it. So what they do is they jack up the prices and they burden the insurance companies with it. And the insurance companies turn around and either drop us or they jack up the rates. So somehow, one way or another, we're paying for it.
And there's no transparency, Brian. Everything else, and you know, I'm an attorney, and I don't really like attorneys, and the biggest problem in my profession is the billable hour, which is why I've created a model that's a flat fee. Well, in healthcare, we have gone to a capitated or flat fee. For most of the folks out in your audience that are on Medicare don't even know that they're part of an accountable care organization, which is a bundled or flat fee arrangement. There needs to be more transparency in what is the government actually charging, or excuse me, what's the pharmaceutical industry charging the government, whether you're on Medicare or Medicaid, or even if you're on private insurance, for these pharmaceuticals, and then ultimately what portion are you paying? I think if people had a better understanding, just like we do when we go out and buy cars, just like when we do and go get hotel rooms or flights, I think that would drive public interest in getting these costs down.
Absolutely. Brian Rotella, thanks so much.